Hey there, all you musical theater maniacs. Welcome back to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni, and this is episode 16 of Broadway Jeopardy! Happy sweet 16, everyone!
You are 16, going on 17.
I'm bringing you a brand new episode of Broadway Jeopardy every week with 26 new clues and 5 new categories every episode, including the final Jeopardy round. And all for the low price of hitting that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. I think I've got some fun categories headed your way this week, including an audio and a visual category. Heyo! Let's dive right into this week's game, shall we? This is Broadway Jeopardy! Taking a look at this week's categories, we start off as always with last week's final Jeopardy category, which is shows about Hollywood, looking at musicals set in Hollywood or about the filmmaking industry. That's followed by Who's That? In this audio category, every clue I'll play you a recording of the song Everything's Coming Up Roses from Gypsy, and you identify who's singing it. A big thank you to my wonderful patron Amy Wolf for that suggestion. I love it. The next category is Our Great State, looking at shows or song titles with states in them. Up next is Art by Ray Kampf. A brilliant artist and graphic designer, Ray Kampf published this book, A History of Western Civilization in 133 3/10 musicals. It's an amazing visual timeline of history with all these musical theater characters in it. I'll show you a drawn character and you name the show they're from, and you can even give yourself an extra $100 if you guess the name of the character as well. Why not? And last but not least, we have
Somebody's getting married.
In this category, we'll look at different weddings that take place on stage during various musicals. And of course, we end with the final Jeopardy round, so make sure and tally your scores and let me know how you fare in the comments after Final Jeopardy. Let's start in the $200 round, the Overture round as I call it, where the questions tend to be easier to help you get some fake cash in your stash before I get you with the harder questions. We begin with shows about Hollywood. Your first $200 clue is... This Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, based on the classic film of the same name, opened on Broadway with Glenn Close playing Norma Desmond. What is Sunset Boulevard? Here is something really random from my collection. I know I like to show you guys some random things from my stash of theater treasures. This, it's hard to see. So I found this in a thrift store in Southern California where I grew up. I was visiting my family and went to a thrift store and found this. So I'll try to get really close. These are the actual false eyelashes worn. It says, I can say anything with my eyes, a quote from Norma Desmond. It says, worn by Glenn Close, and it's autographed Glenn Close. Worn by Glenn Close on April 7th, 1994 in Sunset Boulevard at the Shubert Theater in Los Angeles. So this was before the show went to Broadway with Glenn Close. These are her actual false eyelashes that she wore. I don't know if this was for a Broadway Cares type event or I don't know. It's all framed really nice, really random. I had to have it. Up next in the Who's That category, where you identify the singer, your $200 audio clue is this woman heard here.
You'll be swell, you'll be great, gonna have the whole world on a plate.
Who is Ethel Merman? I had to, of course, start off with the original Madame Rose herself. Stephen Sondheim, who wrote the lyrics to Gypsy, was originally slated to write both music and lyrics to the musical. But Miss Merman, after last working with an unknown writing team on the not-so-popular Happy Hunting, demanded a more seasoned professional to write the music, thus giving us the Julie Stein melodies we all love. It is a fascinating thought experiment, though, to imagine what a full Sondheim Gypsy would have sounded like. Moving on to the category Our Great State, for $200 your clue is, ironically, in this landmark musical, you'll hear the song Kansas City sung by the character Will Parker? What is Oklahoma is the correct answer. Yes, everything's up to date in Kansas City, according to Will Parker.
You can turn the radiator on whenever you want some heat. With every kind of comfort, every house is all complete. You can walk the privies in the rain and never wet your feet.
On to Art by Ray Kampf, our visual category. Remember, you name the show, and an extra $100 if you also guess the name of the character. Your $200 clue is seen here. What is South Pacific is the answer, and the character is Luther Billis. This is what he wears in the number Honey Bun during the Thanksgiving Follies, a review being put on by the nurses and GIs to celebrate the holiday.
Her hair is blonde and curly, her curls are hurly-burly, her lips are pips, I call her hips, twirly and whirly.
And we finish up the Overture round with Somebody's Getting Married. The $200 clue is, this classic movie musical starring Howard Keel and Jane Powell features a septuple wedding. What is Seven Brides for Seven Brothers? The classic movie musical is a favorite of mine. I know it's very much of its time and incredibly misogynistic, but come on, those dances by Michael Kidd, the barn dance, forget about it. They're so acrobatic and fun, and I love the score, bless your beautiful hide. The movie was adapted for the stage in 1978 and toured the country, but closed before reaching Broadway. A stage version of Seven Brides would finally reach Broadway in 1982, but closed after 15 previews and only 5 performances. Yikes. It's a property that just has to remain on film, I suppose. I hope you all aced that round. Let's move on to the only slightly harder $400 round now. Circling back to shows about Hollywood, the $400 clue is, this biomusical starred Rob McClure as one of the earliest megastars of motion pictures, appearing in several using the persona The Little Tramp. What is Chaplin the musical? Chaplin holds a special place in my heart. I was the merch manager for the musical and got to be there with the show from dress rehearsal through previews and opening, and ultimately its very untimely closing in my opinion. But it was such an incredible experience to watch a new show change and grow right before my eyes and see the little changes every night. And Rob McClure is also a dear friend of mine. I was on the Avenue Q National Tour with him, and seeing him just blow audiences away with his performance every night was a joy as well. Now for $400, listen and figure out who's that, with this woman heard here.
You'll be swell, you'll be great, gonna have the whole world on a plate.
Who is Bernadette Peters? Miss Peters' portrayal of the infamous stage mother drew mixed reviews from critics and audiences in 2003, but her performance at that year's Tony Awards has certainly lasted in the memories of theater nerds, and I think has helped secure a positive light on the performance all these years later.
This people's got it, and this people's spreading it around.
Moving on to the Our Great State category, the $400 clue is, this musical from 1978 takes place largely at an establishment known as the Chicken Ranch, run by Miss Mona Stangley. What is the best little whorehouse in Texas? The Chicken Ranch was a real-life brothel located just outside of LaGrange, Texas, which operated from about the late 1800s until 1973, when it was finally shut down by the local government. Best Little Whorehouse in Texas is another musical I'm surprised has never gotten a proper Broadway revival. There was a tour starring one of my favorite screen legends, Anne Margaret, in 2001. But someone get Reba to do a revival for Pete's sake. The $400 visual clue for Art by Ray Kampf is seen here. What is a funny thing happened on the way to the forum is the answer, and Pseudolus is the character name. The part of Pseudolus was originally intended for Phil Silvers, who had had great success on Broadway and in the Phil Silvers TV show playing Sergeant Bilko. When Silvers turned down the role of Pseudolus, it went to Zero Mostel, who opened the show on Broadway and did the film version. Silvers always regretted his decision and agreed to do a Broadway revival of the musical in 1972, and he would become the first ever leading performer to win a Tony Award for playing a role in a revival. And closing out the $400 round in the Somebody's Getting Married category, the $400 clue is, in this corny musical, the wedding of Maisie and Beau is put in jeopardy when the local crops fail and Maisie decides to leave town to try to fix it. What is Shucked is the correct answer. One of the funniest new musicals in recent years. Shucked is wholly original, not based on a book or a movie or anything, though the original concept was based on the TV show Hee Haw, before the musical went in a more original direction. The show is about to tour now, I believe, and I highly recommend checking it out if you can. It's a wonderful show with a great score by famed country western writers Brandy Clark and Shane McNally, and as I've said, the book by Robert Horn is chock full of wit, heart, and big belly laughs, and of course, delicious corn puns.
They turned it into alcohol.
Yeah, that's my favorite form.
Christmas over and it's at the knowledge board. We were cornbread, we were cornbread. Now here we really feel like we were chosen.
Let's dive right into the $600 round now. In the shows about Hollywood category, your $600 clue is, this musical flopped in 1974 despite having a great score by Jerry Herman and starring Bernadette Peters and Robert Preston. What is Mac and Mabel is the correct answer. This is one of those shows that has a treasured cast recording despite its short run on Broadway for only 8 weeks. There were reportedly several problems with the show, including a lack of chemistry between the two stars, which only highlighted the large age gap between them. Robert Preston was 56 during Mac and Mabel, while Bernadette Peters was 26 at the time. But the main complaint seemed to be that the musical ultimately was too much of a downer for most people. The musical is based on the real-life early stars of Hollywood, director Max Sennett and his favorite star, Mabel Normand, the latter of which met a tragic end. Ironically, though the score was the thing most praised by critics, come Tony time, the short-lived show was surprisingly rewarded for 8 nominations, including Best Musical, but none for Best Score. Sorry, Jerry Herman. Up next for Who's That? Your $600 audio clue is the woman heard here.
You'll be swell, you'll be great. Gotta have the whole world on a plate.
Who is Angela Lansbury? Miss Lansbury took on the role of Madame Rose for the original London cast of the show, which wasn't until 1973. Actually, Elaine Stritch was originally cast in the role for the West End, but when ticket sales weren't soaring on Stritchy's name, Miss Lansbury was brought in instead. She would go on to reprise her lauded performance on Broadway in 1974. Your $600 clue in the Our Great State category is, in the musical 1776, founding father Richard Henry Lee sings this song about his love for his state and his family surname. What is The Lees of Old Virginia? The score to 1776 was by history teacher Sherman Edwards, and it has some powerful songs like Mama Look Sharp and Molasses to Rum, which are wonderfully balanced with more comical songs like He Plays the Violin and The Lees of Old Virginia.
You see, it's here a Lee, there a Lee, and everywhere a Lee, a Lee.
Social Lee, political
Lee,
financial
Lee,
natural
Lee,
internal
Lee,
external
Lee,
fraternal
Lee,
eternal
Lee, the FFV, the first family in the sovereign colony of Virginia.
Over in the Art by Ray Kampf category, the $600 visual clue is this woman seen here. What is Aida is the answer, and the character is Amneris, originally played by Sherry Renee Scott. I love Aida. It was the third Broadway show I ever saw, and the first with the original Broadway cast, so it will always hold a special place in my heart. Amneris probably has one of the best character arcs in a modern musical, I think. She ends the musical a wise and just leader, but when she started the show, her strongest suit was fashion. And don't tell Paul, but somebody's getting married. Your $600 clue is, in the smash hit jukebox musical Mamma Mia, the plot revolves around Sophie and her wedding to this man. Who is Sky is the answer. The original Sky on Broadway was Joe Mahoda, who is now one of the biggest theatrical talent agents out there working for Creative Arts Agency, representing dozens of A-list figures like Aaron Sorkin, Eddie Redmayne, Jim Parsons, Cecily Strong, and Jane Fonda, to literally name just a few.
Oh, well, he's very popular, Ed.
It's time now to really crank up the difficulty level for you Broadway trivia nerds. But before we do, please, please, please take a second and hit that little like button for me. It helps appease the YouTube gods and helps more fine folks like yourself see these videos and makes me feel like a really special boy. Thanks, everyone. I really do appreciate it. Okay, looking at some shows about Hollywood, your $800 clue is... This musical is two separate one-acts. The first is a review of songs, both old and new, about the famed movie-making town, while the second act is a take on Chekhov's The Bear, starring Marx Brothers stand-ins. What is A Day in Hollywood, A Night in the Ukraine? This charming two-act musical opened on Broadway in 1980 and featured David Garrison and Priscilla Lopez in its ensemble. The first act review, dedicated to old school Hollywood, is wonderful, but being a Marx Brothers fan, I really love the second act.
I'm Russia's leading legal brain. I'm wise to all the loopholes, and very modestly I maintain I haven't any scruples. Let's not forget my father, a liar too was he. In fact, he shouted, I object! The first time he saw me. I'm Sam O'Bar, the bar, a most obnoxious lawyer. I'll press your lawsuit while you wait, and scorch it too, annoy ya.
Moving on to Who's That? For $800, who's singing now?
You'll be swell, you'll be great. Gonna have the whole world on a plate.
Who is Billy Porter is the correct answer. Someone who has not played Madame Rose on stage. Yet. Billy Porter, of course, won the Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical for creating the role of Lola in Kinky Boots. But years before that, he took Broadway by storm with his vocal prowess playing Teen Angel in the 1994 revival of Grease.
Beauty school dropout, what? Hanging around the corner store. Beauty school dropout. It's about time you knew the score.
Taking a look at our nifty 50 United States, the $800 clue is, this medieval set musical by Richard Rodgers and Lorenz Hart is based on a novel by Mark Twain and features the songs My Heart Stood Still and Thou Swell. What is A Connecticut Yankee? The musical by the red-hot team of Rodgers and Hart first premiered in 1927 and was a big hit. After the historic opening of Oklahoma in 1943, before the newly minted team of Rodgers and Hammerstein continued their takeover of musical theater, Rodgers would do one last show with Lorenz Hart, his partner of 24 years, a revival of Connecticut Yankee. The show was updated to a more topical wartime setting with two new songs added, including a brilliant comedic number for Vivian Siegel portraying Morgan Le Fay called To Keep My Love Alive, about all the ways she's killed her past husbands. Honestly, one of my favorite early Golden Age show tunes.
Sir Paul was frail, he looked a wreck to me. At night he was a horse's neck to me. So I performed an appendectomy to keep my love alive. Sir Thomas had insomnia, he couldn't sleep at night. I bought a little arson, he's sleeping now, all right? Sir Philip played the harp, I cussed the thing. I crowned him with his harp to bust the thing. And now he plays where harps are just the thing to keep my love alive.
Returning to the art gallery of Ray Kampf, the $800 visual clue is this man seen here. What is Man of La Mancha is the correct answer, and the character is that of Don Quixote. Or Miguel de Cervantes, I suppose, too, is also correct. In the musical, based on the 17th century novel Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes, the leading man belts out some of the most beloved show tunes of all time, including The Quest, better known as The Impossible Dream. Many wonderful leading men have taken on the role of Don Quixote over the years, including the original Richard Kiley, Raul Julia, and Brian Stokes Mitchell, who gave a brilliant performance I was lucky enough to have seen in person.
This is my quest to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far.
Over in the Somebody's Getting Married category, the $800 clue is, at Zeidel and Model's wedding celebration in the musical Fiddler on the Roof, you'll see men perform this show-stopping dance. What is the bottle dance is the correct answer. The brilliant bit of staging from the legendary Jerome Robbins is seen in most productions of Fiddler. It's become so synonymous with the wedding scene in Fiddler, many assume that the bottle dance was actually a traditional Jewish dance performed at weddings. But no, it's all from the mind of Mr. Robbins. Apparently when doing some research for Fiddler, he attended many Orthodox weddings to get a feel for them, and at one wedding he saw a man balancing a bottle on his head pretending to be drunk, and Mr. Robbins was impressed enough to create a whole dance section on it, and it's now one of the most recognizable bits of choreography in musical theater history. Alrighty, my theater-loving friends, we've reached that point. The big show, the main event. It's the $1,000 round. Let's hear that dramatic music. Good luck, players. You might need it. We take one last look at shows about Hollywood with the $1,000 clue. This musical, starring Elaine Stritch and Don Amici, may have thrown audiences off with its title and poster art, evoking a famous fairy tale having little to do with the actual show. What is Goldilocks? Yes, the title Goldilocks and the show's key art featuring a dancing bear really has nothing to do with the plot about a musical comedy star, Elaine Stritch, trying to retire after getting married, but being forced to honor a contract with silent film producer Don Amici to appear in one of those newfangled moving pictures. It's a fun show with a beautiful score that I just happen to have a full breakdown of on the channel. I'll of course put a link to that video at the end of this one so you can watch that next.
Oh, brother.
For $1,000, your final chance to figure out who's that is this woman heard here.
You'll be swell, you'll be great, gonna have the whole world on a plate.
Who is Imelda Staunton is the answer. Miss Staunton, whom American audiences probably know best as the horrible Dolores Umbridge in the Harry Potter films, gave a much-loved performance in a 2015 West End revival that was thankfully filmed and has been broadcast on PBS. Your $1,000 clue for the Our Great State category is, Ruth Sherwood and her sister Eileen sing this song about the state they originally hail from and think of going back to in the musical Wonderful Town. What is Ohio? Based on the play My Sister Eileen, which in turn was based on the real-life accounts of writer Ruth McKinney, Wonderful Town sees the two sisters moving to the raucous Christopher Street in New York City's Greenwich Village. On their first night in their new basement apartment, things do not go well for the pair, and they wonder why they ever left their home state.
Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why did I ever leave Ohio? Why did I wander to find what lies yonder when life was so cozy at home?
Our last look at the wonderful art by Ray Comp for $1,000 is this girl seen here. What is Natasha Pierre in The Great Comet of 1812 is the answer, and the character is that of Natasha. Based on just a sliver of the massive tome War and Peace, Great Comet is, in my opinion, one of the best modern day musicals of all time. I saw it 3 times off Broadway in 2 different spaces, and I saw it several more times on Broadway. If you don't know the show, do yourself a favor and listen to the cast recording. Pretty much the entire show is on there. It's so brilliant and complex and new. I really love that show. Let's crash one last wedding with Somebody's Getting Married. And the $1,000 clue, this 2015 musical comedy about the wild lead up to a couple's nuptials starred Tyne Daly, Sierra Boggess, Harriet Harris, and Lisa Howard. What is It Should Have Been You? I loved It Should Have Been You. I saw it 3 times on Broadway. It's definitely a show where I did not understand the less than stellar reception it got. It really, to me, felt like an old-fashioned musical while also being very of the moment with a twist in the plot that no one sees coming. It's a great show with a big ensemble of roles, and if you are involved in local community theaters, I urge you to look at this show. I promise you it's a crowd pleaser.
Hello, Marty.
What'd I do?
My daughter breaks your heart and you don't have the decency to call me.
I'm sorry.
It should have been you.
And with that, we have reached the denouement, the final Jeopardy round. Tally up your scores, players, and decide how confident you feel in the category Meet Cutes, looking at how some famous musical couples first met. Okay, has everyone made their wagers? Angelito? Timothy? Trey? Shasid? Yeah, I see you guys playing there. Y'all ready? Okay, here is your final clue. In this musical, our leading couple first meets backstage at Keeney's Music Hall after our leading lady performs the song Coronet Man. What is Funny Girl? Fanny Bryce meets the debonair gambler Nicky Arnstein backstage and is instantly smitten with him.
What'd you say your name was?
Nick Onstein.
Nicky Onstein, what a beautiful, beautiful name.
And that's this week's game, my friends. How did you all do this week? I feel like it wasn't as hard as last week's game, but let me know if you agree. Thanks to Ray Comp for allowing me to use your beautiful art this week. Everyone go check out more of Ray's stuff on Instagram. There's the handle, and give him some love. And thank you to super patron Amy Wolf for her category suggestion this week. I love it. I love and thank all you patrons. You guys have no idea what your support means to me. If you want to check out the Patreon and be able to suggest categories, there is a link in the video description along with a link to my merch shop with some fun designs. And I'm hoping to get 1 or 2 Broadway Jeopardy designs in there too. So check that out. As always, please, if you like Broadway Jeopardy and want it to continue weekly, please share these videos with as many people as you can or want to. I think I'm going to go 25 episodes and then maybe reassess and see if a weekly release is the best plan of action going forward. I say all of this just to be as upfront with you guys as I can. Anyways, I've talked long enough. You guys that stick around to the very, very end are by far my favorites. You can follow me on the socials if you want. We have a good time over there. Here's my handle on the screen, blah, blah, blah. But until next week, my Broadway babies, I'm Mark Benani. This is Broadway by Ghostlight. Thanks for playing.